There were a lot of remarks that they made that were very disrespectful, that like had to do with us jeopardizing his health for even attempting a home birth. Even like after the birth, nurses were making comments like, "Oh, now you'll know better for next time, like not to do something
Yeah.
so stupid." And I'm not even exaggerating, like that is how they were talking to us.
Hi, I'm Kayla Heater, follower of Jesus, wife and mother of 5 children, Christian childbirth educator and doula, and your host of the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, where we share God-centered birth stories, evidence-based birth education, and our pursuit of surrendering our birth plans to God. Let's get started. Hey everybody. I hope you enjoyed my daughter's intro last week. Brinkley, my one and only daughter and my oldest child, kicked off our episode last week because I had to run to a birth and hadn't gotten a chance to record the intro yet for last week. So I hope you all enjoyed it. I had the honor of going to a couple of births this week, which was wonderful and lovely, and a first-time mom for the first one, second-time mom for the second. Got to do actually my third, I don't want to say accidental, I'm going to say unplanned catch of a baby. Man, sometimes when that water breaks, that baby just descends very quickly, especially for a second-time mom. And the midwife's not there yet, so you just got to do what you got to do. But it's always so special. I honestly really feel truly blessed and honored whenever that does happen. And it's obviously not the plan. It's not what we had arranged, but the Lord knew it was going to happen. So I always feel great trusting his, orchestration of the entire thing. So congratulations to those 2 mamas who I was able to be with this week at their births. Got another one coming up here soon, or at least she hopes it's soon, I'm sure. But yeah, I wasn't sure if I was going to say anything about this or not, but it really has been a very emotional week, and it's crazy to me. I'm not on social media very much. I'm a busy mom of almost 6 kids, and we homeschool, but with everything that happened this past week in our country, and particularly the assassination of Charlie Kirk, it's been hitting us a lot harder than I ever thought it would or imagined it would. I remember I came home. We had gone to our homeschool co-op that day. I got home and took a little rest, and when I got up, my husband came and told me what had happened, and I was just sort of like, I guess a little bit in shock, but just kind of like, wow, like that's really horrible and that's really unfortunate. And I want to say I can't believe that happened, but I could believe it. And just knowing the evil that exists in our country and the hate that exists in this world, and so it was easy to believe, but still hard to hear. And what I didn't understand is why over the next several days, I would just randomly burst out into tears. And my husband would too, and he's not a crier. And at church this morning, there was just so much conversation about why is this so much heavier than than if this happened to anybody else. Why does this feel like, this huge weight and this, I don't know, just this heaviness. And I think after thinking about it and praying about it and, for the last several days and for, talking about it at church this morning, there's just like this general consensus among believers that while what happened was so incredibly sad and so tragic and, just feeling so much grief over what happened and who it happened to, at the same time being filled with this sense of this righteous anger, but almost like this righteous motivation that wasn't there before, or at least wasn't ignited before like it has been now. And so now I feel like this horrible thing the Lord is already using in so many amazing ways of just the gospel being preached in places here in America that it hasn't been before. People who have been far from the Lord turning to Jesus because of what happened. So I'm just trying to focus on that and focus on the positives coming out of that, not bury my head to what happened. And as my husband and I was still crying in worship this morning over it, but just being encouraged despite it, knowing just how big of a difference what has happened is making. And I wasn't sure I was going to say anything about this. I know this is a birth podcast, but this is a Christian, Jesus loving, faith based birth podcast. And I felt like I couldn't just pretend like what happened this week didn't happen because it's so impactful. So our heart and prayers are with the Kirk family and everything they're walking through right now, but also we're just super hopeful and encouraged to see that the light of Jesus is being spread even more so because of this. But if you need a break from all of the Charlie Kirk stuff, which I know that's what you're here to listen to this podcast for. So this week's episode, let's get into it. This is actually going to be a 2-part episode. We've done that a few times, I think maybe twice since we started this podcast. But sometimes when someone's just telling their story, it's beautiful and it is. I love the context and I love the detail and I appreciate hearing all of that. But it's sometimes just too long to put into one single episode. So this is going to be a 2-parter. It is 2 birth stories that we're going to split. The first story will be this week, and the second story will be next week. So let me go ahead and get into this week's part 1 episode. I've heard of many moms who plan an unmedicated hospital birth for their first. And then some who even plan a birth center birth for their first. And then the handful of moms who plan a home birth for their first. But it's rare I find somebody who plans a free birth for their first. While Miriam's heart started in the right place, as the planned free birth inched closer, so did her pride, and she would be humbled. Her first birth was 49 hours long and not anything like she had planned. And while at one time she would have seen that as a disappointment and remained in a place of bitterness, the Lord has since revealed to her his purpose in it all. Welcome to another episode of Surrendered Birth Stories. I am your host, Kayla Heater. And I have Miriam and Balt with me today. And I am excited to hear their stories. I want you guys to go ahead and just take a minute, introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about you and your life, and help us to get to know you before we hear your story.
Yeah, my name is Baltazar, born and raised in Tucson, Arizona. I currently work at Raytheon as a quality inspector. Some hobbies that I like to do is I like to cycle, which it has diminished a bit with having kids now, but yeah, I like cycling, trying to get back into weight training, but I also love to do crafts. I'm a craftsman with when it comes to making rings or just or with wood. I like wood crafting as well. Play a lot with my kids. They're my life, but first is God, second is my wife, then my kids.
Just as it should be.
Yeah.
Yes.
hmm
My name is Miriam. I'm a mom, a wife, a doula. What else? I do work part-time. It's a hybrid job, so mostly from home, which is very nice. So I get to stay home with my kids while I'm working. And there are some challenges that come with that, but I am very blessed to have a hybrid job. And it is social work. Essentially, I'm helping families prevent abuse and neglect from happening. So it can be a very challenging job, just the nature of it. But I do enjoy doing social work. I've done it for many years now. And I also do some admin work as well from home, in addition to the doula work. and caring for the kids. So it's a busy life, but it's a good one. What else? Is there anything else that I
You
missed?
love to sew, you
Oh,
love to
yeah.
crochet.
Mm.
You also love crafting
Yes.
and those ways.
We're a creative family.
Uh, love to take walks. Love taking the kids to do walks. Um, loves ice cream and boba.
Yes, ice cream and boba.
Well, that's a great thing to love.
Mm.
So you grew up in Arizona, Balt. Where do you guys
Yeah.
currently live now?
Sahuarita, Arizona, which is just south of Tucson, where I was born and raised. Yeah.
Gotcha. So close by to where you were.
Yeah.
Miriam, is that where you grew up as well?
No, I grew up in the Midwest. I've only been in Arizona for a little more than 4 years.
Oh, so where did you grow up?
And both in Kansas and Missouri.
I think about like tornadoes whenever I
Yes.
hear about that. My
Yes.
kids are somewhat obsessed with tornadoes. They think they're really cool and they want them to happen here. And I'm like, no, nope, nope, nope. We
No,
don't want those to happen here.
they're not great. I've been in my fair share of tornadoes, and I do not recommend.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to explain to them. Okay, so let's dive in to your birth stories. So you have two kids.
Mhm.
How old is your oldest?
He turned 2 in June.
Okay, so we had the two under two for a little bit there. Then,
Yeah.
For
yeah.
like 3 weeks,
Yeah.
if that even counts.
So take us back to, I guess, almost 3 years ago when you got pregnant with him.
So, we got married in May of 2022. Is that right? That's 3 years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah, 15th of May,
Yeah.
2022.
And around that time, I was giving my hand at natural family planning. Um, and it obviously wasn't going well because 4 months into marriage, I got pregnant unintentionally. It took a while to like realize that I had gotten pregnant. And I think that's because I wound up ovulating late. So around the time that I was expecting my period, I was actually ovulating. And like looking back, I wasn't tracking my cycle correctly. I wasn't doing what you were supposed to do with natural family planning. I wasn't being consistent with taking my temperature at the same time every day or as soon as I woke up. I wasn't tracking cervical mucus, things like that. I was doing it very willy-nilly and wound up getting pregnant, which I was totally fine with because I wanted to have a baby, but he was not in the mindset of having kids right away. And so it took him by surprise when I wound up pregnant. And that whole situation was it was very messy, it seemed like. Like I said, I wound up ovulating late, probably like a week and a half too late, 2 weeks later than I anticipated. So around the time that I was actually ovulating, I was expecting to get my period, and that's when I started testing for pregnancy, and it kept coming up negative. So for about a week and a half, we just had like negative test after negative test. And I thought that was really strange because my cycle was late and I'd never really had irregular cycles before then. And so I was concerned about what was wrong with my body and like the hormone production. And so I wound up scheduling an appointment with an OBGYN. And I went there and shared my concerns with one of the doctors, and they were very dismissive. It was a disappointing appointment. They essentially said that there's like no reason that I should be concerned for having a late period, that women go months without getting their cycle, and that's completely normal. And I knew that was false at the time. That while it's like common for women to not get their cycle for whatever reason, that it's not a normal thing for women to go through. And so I felt very dismissed in that appointment. They did do a blood draw, like just to ease my concerns. And so they did test for HCG, but it took a few days for those results to come back. So I think that appointment was on a Thursday, and I didn't get the results back until the next Monday. And they called and said that my HCG levels were at a 6. So it was negative and I wasn't pregnant. But based on the research that I had done, I knew that that was in like the abnormal range. Like usually HCG levels for a non-pregnant woman are like 4 or under. And then like between like 5 and 25 is abnormal or inconsistent, and then above 25 is like positive for pregnancy. And so because of that, I went and picked up, well, I guess we went together and picked up some more pregnancy tests and went home and I took one and it was invalid. Like the blue dye had like smeared across the whole test. It was invalid and I was like, okay, whatever, I'll test the next morning. And so I did, and he was at work and it came back positive and I was completely shocked. Like I was not expecting it to be positive at all, even though I had taken probably a dozen tests by that point. And I was just like, what am I gonna do? Even though I knew obviously the answer is we're gonna have the baby, I was just in shock. And so later that evening, when he came home from work, I had like prepared a little, like I don't know, I'd call it a surprise
Like an
baby,
announcement. Yeah,
an
surprise visit.
announcement for him. I had gone to Walmart and picked up a gender neutral baby outfit and written some scripture on pieces of paper. And I had like four positive pregnancy tests that I had wrapped up in the outfit, and I had given that to him when he got home from work. And I remember feeling so nervous to give that to you, and I was really worried about how you would react just because I knew that you had not wanted a baby at that point. But I eventually mustered up the courage to give it to you,
Right.
and you opened it and you saw the tests, and I think, well, how did you respond, sweetie?
So I cried right away. A lot of
Wait,
it
what kind of tears?
it was a fear. Yeah, this is like to be transparent. Yeah, this was fear because eh, I wanted to be in a position to be able to provide for my whole family. And so yeah, before the pregnancy, yeah, my wife and I we fought a lot. We fought a lot when we should have kids, when should we start. A lot of it was and I was my heart was hardened because just where we were at, we were living in a studio. I wanted to be in a home that I bought not that long ago. And just financial, I was just, I wanted to be in a better position. So yeah, when she announced the pregnancy, I was afraid because again, a father wants to provide for his family, wants to protect his family. And I was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to do that. And so that's why, we fought a bit before, and that's why I was crying because it was just fear. But after that, it was just more like, well, Lord, you ordained everything. Children are inheritance from you. They're arrows to a warrior. I have to, well, in a sense, toughen up and just understand that there's going to be changes and sacrifices. But as the pregnancy, if I would fast forward just a little bit, like to give some light to it, as the pregnancy moved forward and our first son was born, Shalom, God has worked a lot in my heart and softened my heart to the point where I was just like, all right, well, when are we gonna have the next kid?
Yeah, he loves being a dad now.
Yeah.
That sounds like
Uh,
180 right there.
yeah.
Yes.
So the Lord had definitely worked a lot in my heart and radically changed it when it comes to having kids.
Well, that's beautiful. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In terms of the pregnancy, then, was it a smooth pregnancy? Were there any complications? Like, what kind of care did you seek? What kind of birth were you planning? What were all those details?
Oh, so many details. Um, so
Sorry,
as
I
far
just
as
asked you like four
pregnancy,
questions.
yes, lot, lots to say. As far as the pregnancy being smooth, like health-wise with the baby, like he was fine. There was absolutely nothing wrong with him. And with me, there was nothing majorly wrong too, but I did have HG, which
Hmm.
Yeah, that was
I did not expect. I had heard of it before. I don't know that I had necessarily heard of like the actual term, but I have heard of like moms being really sick in pregnancy, but that it wasn't very common. But I think probably within a week of finding out, and I found out early, like right around 4 weeks. So within about a week of finding out, I started to, get really nauseous and started throwing up. And then closer to maybe like 7 to 8 weeks, I was throwing up like dozens of times a day and just like nauseous 24/7. What I could eat was like constantly changing. Like one day it was chicken
Oh
noodle soup, and
man.
the next it was only chocolate milk. And at one point he went out and bought
A
uh
Costco
gold
30
standard.
pound
Yeah.
protein chocolate powder. I'm like, all right, this will have your
It was
protein.
like $70, and I think I only drank it like one day, and the next day I couldn't drink it anymore. So we were having a really hard time finding something that I could consistently eat. I was pretty sick. I was throwing up like 40 to 60 times a day.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
I know
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
it was I and sometimes looking back, I kind of like gaslight myself, and I'm like, oh, it wasn't even that bad. Like I'm just being dramatic.
No,
But then other people
No, that's
remind me how
bad.
terrible it
yeah.
was.
I mean, it was to the point where she lost so much fluid that we had to go to the hospital so she can get IV.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow, okay. Yeah, and I mean, she wasn't really gaining weight either.
Oh, yeah, you
No,
can't when you're throwing up that much, you're probably losing
no.
Yeah.
weight.
I lost like 15 pounds within the first couple of months, which I know that there are some moms with HD that lose way more and they have it way worse than I do, or I did anyways. But it was still really hard to go through, especially because I wasn't very educated on it and I wasn't prepared. Like I never really thought like that would happen to me.
So did you take any kind of like medication or did you do anything to try and help it or did you just like survive?
Well, I did eventually get on Zofran
Yeah.
and Reglan. I think finally my OB prescribed Zofran around 10 weeks, and I had like brought up the idea of having HG, and they're like, probably not. You seem fine to me. Even though like I had lost weight, they said it was normal that plenty of women lose weight when they're pregnant. And given that like I was already considered overweight, they weren't worried about it. Finally, when we went to the ER when I was about 14 weeks, that the doctor there diagnosed me with HG and put me on another medication. So I was taking multiple at that time. And the medications, they helped prevent me from vomiting so much, but the nausea remained the same. So I still couldn't like eat a whole lot. And it was hard to drink enough water because of that. Like everything just tasted terrible. I think the only thing that I could like regularly keep down was cereal, oddly enough.
Yeah. Oh yeah, a lot
A
of
lot of
lot
cereal.
of cereal.
hmm Um,
Smells too. Smells got you.
yes, the smells. Oh, I remember, and I'm so glad I didn't experience this the last pregnancy, but like I was even like triggered just by like his like body smell
Body
or
smell.
deodorant,
Oh yeah.
cologne. It was hard to sleep next to him at night because of it. Like we couldn't really kiss that
Yeah.
much because it would just trigger my gag reflex and I would vomit
Oh
and
yeah,
How did that feel, Balt?
that was
When your wife
rough.
has to vomit after she kisses you.
That that was rough because you can say my love language is, like just
Physical
touch, even if
touch.
it's like drawing my back or rubbing it or whatever. Hugs, I love hugs, and so like I hug my friends at church and all that. Like I don't like handshakes. It's just hugs. I mean, of course, if I'm first meeting you, handshake, but after that, you
he's
know,
the
You only get
hugger.
one handshake.
yeah. Um,
Well, my husband can totally relate to you, by the way.
yeah.
We actually used to, during my pregnancies, in the early place when I'm throwing up all the time and the smells are awful, he either sleeps in another room or I put like body pillows between us in the bed
Oh
I think we
man.
did that.
so that I
Hmm.
can't like smell anything from him. And I like face the other direction. And yeah,
I'm
I
pretty sure we put pillows in
100%.
between each
Yeah,
other.
we did. We created a fort between us. And the other thing too is like we bought like even before we got married, we were shopping for a perfume and a cologne for our wedding, like specifically for that.
Mm,
And now she hates
hates
Yeah,
it.
you
the
wore that cologne a lot when I was first pregnant with Shalom, and now I can't stand it to this day.
Oh, yep.
It's my least favorite one,
yeah, and
unfortunately.
it's my
Mm.
favorite
It's your wedding one. Oh
one.
man.
Yeah.
See, HG does that. It does
Yeah,
that. It's like we can laugh about it now, but when you're in it, to me, it's like the worst.
Right.
it was terrible. Yeah, it was absolutely horrible. I tried like every remedy in the book for nausea, and none of them even touched the HG.
Yeah, they
I
won't.
think I diffused so much peppermint oil that to this day I still hate the smell of peppermint. I
Peppermint.
can't suck on peppermints because of it. I'm getting back to where I like mint ice cream finally because it was my favorite growing up, but I couldn't stand it for a couple of years after, well, when I was pregnant and after I had Shalom. But yeah, it was awful. And for some reason, I don't know if this was just like an HG thing or whatever, but the vomiting was much more intense than like normal vomiting, at least for me. It
Hmm.
was like so violent. My whole abdomen hurt, and so I was just like constantly in pain because I was vomiting so frequently. It was really miserable. Like I was not enjoying being pregnant
Well,
whatsoever, and it was
yeah,
so
you
sad.
can't. Now, did it go away? Did it get better eventually, or was it like that the entire pregnancy?
Man, felt like forever.
It did eventually go away. I think I stopped vomiting around 5 months pregnant, and I was still nauseous for a while after that. But I think by the time I was 6 months pregnant, it did start to dissipate, which I was very thankful for. But then
Yeah.
after around that same time, the heartburn kicked in.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
terrible heartburn. It was
And
like
that'll make you throw up too.
yes,
Like,
yes. Or really, my gag reflex has been so sensitive since having HG that, like, even just coughing will make me throw up. And so I do remember being sick, I think in the third trimester, and I was coughing and throwing up because of that. But it wasn't because of HG. That had thankfully gone away.
yeah, you're a professional vomiter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what my daughter calls me too. She's like,
Mhm.
"Mom, you're a professional at that. You've got that." I'm like, "Mm-hmm. Yep."
Yeah.
You know what? I will say there is some skill to it.
Yeah.
I had to no, let's hear me out, honey. I had to learn how to like
Drive and throw
physically
up at the
pause.
same time.
Yes, I
Mm-hmm.
was driving down the interstate and vomiting at one point. So that is a skill.
Mm-hmm.
But also like I had to learn how to posture myself when I was throwing up because there was one point, and this has happened more than once, but there was one point that was particularly frightening to me where I was like throwing up uncontrollably, probably like 12 weeks pregnant, and like I had thrown up and not fully gotten everything like out of my mouth and out of my nose, but all the air in my lungs was gone. Like I had pushed it all out. And so I was worried that I was going to aspirate on my vomit.
Oh,
And I think I cried after I had finally gotten everything out because it was so scary to me. So there is some skill to vomiting.
Oh man.
All that to say, that was a wild time and I did not enjoy it at all.
Sorry,
hmm.
sweetie.
Whether you are pregnant with your first baby or wanting to have a different birth experience for a subsequent delivery, this is the fully comprehensive Christian childbirth course for you, the Surrendered Birth Course. With over 10 years of experience as a childbirth educator, a birth doula, and having had 5 kids myself, almost 6, I have created a course fit for every mama out there who wishes to be fully informed on all things pregnancy, labor, birth, postpartum, and breastfeeding, while remembering to keep Jesus at the center of it all. Our God created a beautiful design for birth, something to look forward to, and not something to be feared. Not only will this course get you prepared for your birth, but it will also get you excited for it. It will answer questions you never knew you had and teach you things you didn't realize were so incredibly valuable and central to the entire birthing process. I've had numerous couples on their second, third, or even fourth babies who've taken this course and said how incredibly glad they were and that they learned so much more than they ever thought they would. With over 12 hours of video content, 5 modules, numerous lessons, detailed PDF printout notes, and endless resources, we dive deep into pregnancy, labor, the risks and benefits of interventions, inductions, immediate and extended postpartum for both mom and baby, everything you need to know about breastfeeding, and basic newborn care. This course covers everything. Once you've taken the course, I am available to you for any questions you might have during a monthly live Q&A Zoom call exclusive to our online course audience, as well as through email. The course is on demand, so as soon as you purchase it, you'll be able to start right away and re-watch any lessons as many times as you need. Whether you are planning a medicated hospital birth or an unmedicated birth at a birth center or home birth, this course will prepare you in every way that you can be prepared. While I understand the desire to take a specific hospital or home birth course catered to your specific birth plans, birth doesn't always go how we plan. And having the knowledge of how birth can go in other environments outside of our plans is essential. Most importantly, I will help you to surrender these plans to God. And in return, the Holy Spirit will provide you with the peace that only He can give. For more information on the course, to read testimonials of others who have taken it, or to sign up for the course, just click the link in the show notes. And lastly, remember, just like we say here every week on the podcast, learn all that you can, make the best plans, and then leave it in God's hands. So we get past the HG, and then we have your standard pregnancy heartburn that also makes you throw up. As we approach the end of pregnancy, then what kind of birth were you planning? Where were you planning to give birth? What were you guys envisioning? What was your plan?
So I had been seeing an OB throughout my pregnancy. I knew differently. I knew there were other options. I had looked into home birth with a midwife, and unfortunately, I didn't start doing that until I was probably around 12-ish weeks pregnant towards the end of the first trimester, and most of the midwives were already booked up. So I
Yeah.
learned my lesson pretty fast. Like you
Mhm.
have to book with a midwife basically as soon as you find out you're pregnant. Especially because here in Tucson, the options are very limited. There's only like 6 midwives, I think, 5 or 6
Yeah.
midwives.
That's crazy because like you're a doula and people are asking you to be their doula like 4 weeks before the
Oh,
birth.
that does happen. That is more common with doulas.
Yeah.
Yeah. People get scared last minute and decide they
Yes.
suddenly want support. Yep.
So,
Yes.
anyways, I had looked into having a home birth, but unfortunately got to that too late. And I had, before I even got pregnant, I think before we even got married, I had heard about free birth, which really piqued my interest. And so I was looking into that more and more throughout the pregnancy. I started talking to him about it, introducing the idea and thought of that to him. Honey, what did you think of it initially?
I was like, you're crazy. Um, because I thought, yeah, again, like culturally speaking, the norm is to go to a hospital, and that's all I was, I
That's all you
grew
knew.
up. That's all, yeah, that's all I knew when I was young. Birth shows would be like any shows where there's a birth, it would be in a hospital. And the worst place to have it is like in a car or home and whatever. And so yeah, that's what I grew up just learning. And then Miriam, she was telling me about home birth, and she presented it well. Like she just told me this is the percentage of of
Became
successful
to the
home births. Yeah,
statistics.
she just brought everything. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it was comforting. I was like, oh man, like you know what? Like hospitals sound rough at that point. But don't get me wrong, I was so scared because it was just like I'm not a doctor. Like I'm not. I don't know what to do. Selfishly, Miriam is like, oh, and it costs nothing. I'm like, oh, you know what? It's better than paying $10,000. But
To
that
go to the
wasn't that.
hospital.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was just like, all right, well, let's have it here at home. And it was that point where I was just like, you know what, sweetie, like you researched all this, you know what you're talking about. This is something I'm gonna have to just trust you and trust your body to do. And
So you
so
got on board with the free birth?
it was, yeah, it was easy. It wasn't that hard to convince me. Because again, she just
Wow, a
presented
lot of
it well.
husbands would
Yeah.
have gone to bat a lot longer.
Yeah. No,
Well, I'm impressed.
she just presented it well, and it was
You
just like, all right,
trusted me.
yeah. And logically speaking, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, hospitals is a very new thing, And like, what did people do before hospitals? And I was just like, yeah, you know what?
That's right. They had their babies at home.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
so once we like had the anatomy scan, we had decided, like that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have a free birth. We're gonna have a baby at home. And that's we were waiting on the anatomy scan to like fully make that decision.
Confirm.
Just
Yeah.
just to like ensure that everything was well with him and he didn't have any sort of needs that would require like immediate medical
Attention.
care after
Yeah.
birth. Yeah. So once we learned that he was completely healthy and we found out his gender at the anatomy scan, which was a lot of fun too. It was a really sweet moment.
That was the only like, and I'm doing quotations here for the audio listeners. Like, that's the only medical intervention that we did, right?
I don't know.
No.
No, I saw an OB throughout that pregnancy. With Eden, that's about all we did.
Ah, yeah.
But yes, I saw an OB until I was about 30 weeks, and then I decided the appointments seemed pointless to me. All they did was weigh me, made me pee in a cup, which was really annoying and hard to do at 30 weeks pregnant, and check my blood pressure, listen to the baby's heart rate, ask me if I had questions, and then sent me on my way. And all of those things I could do at home. I had ordered a blood pressure cuff, I had a Doppler, and a scale to weigh myself if I felt necessary. And if I, at that point, really, if I had any concerns or worried that anything was wrong, I would have just gone to L&D anyways. So it seemed pointless to continue going to the appointments, especially because we were intending to free birth.
So, what did you do to prepare for your free birth, especially as a first time mother? Because I've heard, several free birth stories from like either second or third or fourth or fifth or sixth or, whatever time moms, but it's not often I hear of a free birth for a first time mom. So, what did you guys do to like prepare yourselves for that scenario?
We didn't have that much time because we were living in a studio before the birth. And so, yeah, right when Miriam told me that she was pregnant, we then were like, one of the first things we were like, oh, when are we going to move into the house that I bought? Because the home that I bought had tenants live. I bought it with tenants living in there, and their lease wasn't going to be done within 2 years when I bought the home, and I bought the home a year before we got married.
So
Rough.
their lease is going to end approximately 6 days before our baby's due date.
Oh, wow.
So that was a little nerve-wracking
Yeah.
and stressful at the end of pregnancy trying to move in.
But you made it in?
We did. We did. We
Yeah.
we made it into our home before he was born.
Yeah. Thankfully,
About 2 weeks before he was born.
and then, yeah, the church that we were currently going at that time, they helped us move. They grabbed all of our stuff, brought it to our home that we're currently living in now, and just unpacked. And so a lot of it was, for preparation, was unpacking and just setting up at least the bedroom. The bedroom was like the most important part because that's where,
In the living room.
and the living room for the birth.
So yeah, that's like the physical side of like preparing the birth space. Like mentally, what I did to prepare, or education wise, um, I'll say mentally, I really did not prepare all that much, and that's I think one of the downfalls of that birth experience is I made the mistake of not really mentally preparing. I did read Home Birth on Your Own Terms, Ina May's Guide to Childbirth.
This one right here.
Yes, that
Ooh,
one.
that's a familiar book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
I went through and I put tabs in that one so I could reference it later, which I did reference it in labor actually. But I read those two books and I also listened to the Free Birth Society podcast pretty
Mhm.
religiously throughout my pregnancy. Even before I got pregnant, I was really interested in it. And I think now, looking back, I do wish that I would have done things differently, and I wish I would not have relied so heavily on that podcast. Now, like currently, I'm not a fan of it, just because of a few things that I've realized as like how it impacted my mindset and my birth experience, but also some other ethical things behind the scenes of the podcast and whatnot. But overall, I feel like that podcast, a lot of the things that were said on it by like both the host and women who were speaking on it just really caused me to not be reliant on the Lord or even Him and be totally confident in my body's ability to birth a baby, which I think there's a good part of that, like in being confident that your body can birth a baby, but when you solely rely on yourself for that, I think there's room for failure. And that's exactly what happened. And I became very, I was too reliant on myself. I'll put it that way. And I didn't seek anything from the Lord or even from you. In fact, like in my late pregnancy, I had told Balt, like he didn't need to do anything for me and he didn't need to support me in any way during the labor. That like I could do it all on my own. I didn't need him. So it became a very prideful mindset that I went into labor with.
So we
So
don't recommend the Free Birth Society podcast then.
personally, I do not recommend. I know there are other women who have gleaned some good things from it, but me myself, I did not.
Well, it's also not, it's definitely not like a Christian podcast at
No,
all. Like
no,
not even
not
a little bit.
whatsoever.
Like I listened to a couple episodes of it a while back and I like couldn't get past even just like the language. I was just like, Holy Spirit says this isn't for me. And I like turned it off. I was like, I can't. I'm sorry. No matter how good of a birth story it is, I'm not gonna be able to sit through this without conviction. So
Yeah, it
I
is.
did it.
It is, I guess, what people are saying now. It's pretty woo-woo,
Yeah.
very new agey. Uh,
Yeah.
so it was not the best thing for me to be consuming at the time. But I was ignorant of other birth podcasts, and I only wanted to listen to free birth stories. I didn't want to listen to like home birth midwife stories or hospital
Right.
stories, and so I didn't know where
Which
else I could
makes
go.
sense because that's what you were preparing to do.
Yes.
So take us to labor. How does it start? And then just take off from there.
Okay, so I'm gonna start a little bit before labor, probably a week and a half before. I was still working, still going out and doing client visits and also doing some paperwork from home, which was very stressful for me at the time because I was getting so close to my due date and we were still unpacking our house, trying to get settled in and get things prepared for the birth. I feel like I couldn't even begin to like mentally get ready to give birth until I was done with work. And I was really set on finishing out with my clients instead of transferring the cases over, just because it would be more complicated for like to have had somebody else step in and finish all the documentation at the end. And so I was really set on finishing with my clients. But I think about a week before I went into labor, I like was really feeling like my body was ready, and mentally I was saying like, no, not yet. Like I don't want to have a baby yet. We're not doing this. And so thankfully I did get to the end of the referral period with my final clients. I think it was like June 1st or June 2nd, I can't remember, of 2023. So I had met with my clients and I did all the documentation that evening and submitted it all by 8 p.m. We stayed up for a while. I remember like sitting in the rocking chair. We were like looking at Shalom moving in my belly and feeling his kicks and pushing back and just interacting with him. And then we went to bed. And then the next morning, about like 3 a.m., I had gotten up to go to the bathroom, the end of pregnancy, getting up multiple times a night to go pee.
Right.
So I gotten up to do that, and then I went back to sleep. And about an hour later, I woke up and it just like felt like really wet down there. And I'm like, oh, like that's like all over my legs. Like that's not normal. And so I got up and I went to the bathroom, and I had these pH test strips. And I got one out and like put some of the liquid on it, and the pH level was very high. And I knew that that was not normal for like a normal vaginal pH. And so at that point, I concluded that my water had broken. It wasn't like a whole lot. The bed wasn't soaked, but there was enough to know that like there was at least like a
There was a leak.
yes, yeah.
And how many weeks were you?
I was 39 and 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, you
Okay, so
were.
earlier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had not reached my due date. He was due on my birthday, which is June 6th, which I thought was so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he was not born on my birthday. So, anyways, that was on a Saturday. I believe it was June 3rd. And that was around like 4 in the morning when my water had broken. I was very excited because I knew that labor would likely begin that day, that I would start having contractions. And so I had a hard time going back to sleep because I was so excited. And plus, here in Arizona in the summertime, the sun starts coming up very early in the morning. Usually you can see it come up before 5. And so it was already starting to get light outside. And I'm a terrible sleeper when the sun is out. So I laid in bed for a while trying to sleep, but I wasn't able to. So I got up and went to the kitchen, had some cereal for breakfast. And then I went back to the room probably around 6 a.m. or something like that. And I laid in bed and I just looked at him until he woke up. And then when he woke up, he looked at me and I think I said, honey, guess what? And you said, you're in labor. And I said, my water broke. And he had this shocked look on his face and kind of sat there silently for a few seconds. And then he was like, well, okay, I guess we're gonna have a baby. I will admit it was a very long labor and it was hard to remember everything. And so I just have like bullet points of things that I had jotted down when I was in labor or I did so shortly after.
First labor, water breaking first, typically is a long labor.
Yes, it was very long. So I was thinking, oh, should I rest or should we just go on about our day as normal? And then we decided to just go on about our day as normal. So we gotten dressed and we decided we were going to go check out a thrift store. We were going to go to Walmart and buy a tree to bury the placenta under. We got our son a peach tree.
Oh,
So we went to Walmart and bought that, and we also went to pick up a grocery order at a different store as well. And while we were out and about, I was starting to feel like very, very mild contractions. Like I didn't feel them unless I was paying attention. So it was more so just like cramping. But those did pick up and they continued while we were out and about. They were very far apart, 10 to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So it was almost like nothing was happening, but I was getting excited because, of course, my first birth and things are finally starting to happen. So yeah, is there anything you want to say, sweetie?
Yeah, no, you were just in labor while we went out shopping. That's crazy.
well,
Um,
early labor.
right.
Early labor.
Yeah.
Well, when did active labor start? When did things like kick into gear?
It wasn't until later that night. As we went throughout the day, things continued to progress. I spent most of the afternoon like lounging on the couch and or leaning over the birth ball and watching movies. I was watching I was watching Top Gun, which isn't
Oh,
necessarily
yeah.
a relaxing movie, but the weekend prior we had watched the new Top Gun Maverick, and I really enjoyed it. So I was watching Top Gun, and I remember he said at one point, like, "Oh, I'm gonna put on something more relaxing for you," and I think he put on Night at the Museum, which was definitely not any more relaxing. Um, but he was meal prepping some breakfast burritos, and I was watching TV while like eating watermelon and honey and stuff like that, and drinking some liquid IV electrolytes. I decided to do the mile circuit to see if that would help things pick up. The first position was absolutely terrible. That's really
Mm-hmm.
hard to do while full term. And then when I did the side lying position, things started to pick up. The contractions started to get a little more intense. And then we walked around our block afterwards for half an hour. And that really got more intense. And I was starting to feel like an ache in my back. And it was pretty intense. At that point, I was needing you to like vigorously shake
Yeah.
my hips just to cope through the contractions. So once we got back from our walk, I took a shower, and it was really strange because when I was in the shower, like the contractions almost went away. Like they were so mild, I could barely feel them. And then I got out and they picked back up again. And as time went on, they got more and more intense. I'd say I felt like I was entering active labor around like 7 or 8 p.m. that night.
Okay.
And around that time, like you had started to like set up the birth space.
Yeah.
You turn the lights low
Set up
and
candles.
candles and music. It was a peaceful environment. And from there we just labored like throughout the whole
Yeah.
night. I went back and forth from like the toilet, like being on the toilet to like leaning over on the bed. I was having really bad back labor. And I had kind of thought in my mind, like, oh, like, I wonder if he is not in a good position, like if he's OP. And I think he was looking back. But I was having really bad back labor and I was really struggling to cope with it. All throughout the night, I was like yelling through the contractions, vocalizing pretty loud, and I like desperately needed him to like squeeze and shake my hips. I couldn't get through a contraction without him doing that.
That was tiring. That was very tiring. The amount of like hip shaking that I had to help Miriam with. That was pretty tough. And like, I mean, it wasn't so hard where like uh, where like yeah, I got like 5 minute breaks in between, but yeah, that was like just yeah, that's a workout on its own.
Yeah,
Yes.
as the support person, when you're doing like hip squeezes or counter pressure or hip
Hmm.
shaking or whatever, it does get tiring, but I always just try to tell myself, but I'm not as tired as the mom. So like
Yeah,
I can keep
right,
going.
right, right.
And I am so sorry. I did not understand at the time. So when he was like not shaking my hips as hard because of just pure exhaustion, because he'd been doing it for hours, I'm like, what are you doing? Like I like do
Shake
it
my
harder.
hips.
I
Yeah.
know, and I didn't understand until I attended my first birth about a year later, and then I
As
came
a
home and I'm
doula.
like, honey,
My arms
that was
are
hard work. I'm so sorry. It
yeah.
is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Anyways, we labored all night long.
Gosh.
Neither one of us really slept.
Oh man, that was rough.
It was really hard.
I wanted to stay up with you because you were up and just the I don't know what you call it. Just I was just so sleepy. Like my eyes just couldn't stay open as much as I was just trying to fight it. And yeah, we just sorry about that, sweetie. But yeah, I
She
I
forgives you.
understand. I was really, really struggling. I was not coping with the contractions well. I was tensing up. I was afraid of the next contraction coming. Like I said, I was yelling through them at that point, just really not doing well. And I had not mentally prepared myself for labor. I did
Hmm.
not equip myself with coping skills. You know, one of the things I learned from the Free Birth podcast is that I didn't need to. My body would just birth my baby on its own. And if I just believed in that, that I would have, you know, a good labor and a healthy baby and whatnot. So that was not what was happening. It was not an easy labor. Shalom was completely healthy during that time. Although I will say I felt disconnected from him. Like I was having a hard time really connecting with him and like feeling him move and like feeling like he was okay. Although I did feel that he was in like not a great position. Um, and I just knew that I wasn't progressing, like with dilation at all. I knew that I wasn't progressing, even though the labor had gotten more and more intense. So in the morning, it was the next morning, so now June
oh
4th,
yeah
Sunday, June 4th, um, the sun started to come up, and that slowed my labor, which both worried me and relieved me because I didn't want it to slow down. I just wanted to have him. I just wanted to give birth already. But it relieved me because I got a break and I could actually rest a little bit. Um, they started back up, probably the contractions started back up, like getting more closer together and consistent, coming back to being, I don't know, 3 to 4 minutes apart, maybe around 7 a.m. And I labored for maybe another hour or two before I started telling him that I wanted to go to the hospital. And that I was like, I wanted to give up. Like, I wanted to be done with the free birth. I wanted to go to the hospital and get an epidural. And he was very resistant to
yeah.
that because I
I
had talked with
fought.
him so much about having a free birth, and he was so ready for that.
I mean, because you also told me like fight back against me if I want to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I'm gonna.
Well,
Um,
I
I,
had educated him on like the stages of labor, and I'm like, oh, if I say that I want to give up, it probably means I'm in transition and we're close to having the baby. And so when I started saying that, he's like, nope, we're gonna keep doing this. You're almost there. You got this. You can do this. And at that point, I was just like sobbing,
yeah,
screaming through the contractions and sobbing in between that I wanted to go to the hospital. It was terrible. And I think that's for a couple of reasons. One, because I was not coping and I was tensing, but also back labor is just miserable.
yeah.
It's a
Then
whole other level.
right, and then I think it was getting close to that 20-hour mark where your water broke.
It was, yeah, a little more than 24 hours, which I wasn't
Yeah,
worried about that. I had no signs of infection, no fever, anything like that. His heart rate was fine. It wasn't elevated, so I wasn't necessarily worried about getting an infection. But it was just a long time, and I, like I said, neither of us had slept. I was so nauseous I couldn't eat, so I wasn't eating and I wasn't drinking much, wasn't sleeping, so I was getting pretty fatigued at that point, and felt pretty weak. So we went back and forth for a while about whether we'd go to the hospital. And eventually he gave in and said, okay, well, we're just gonna go to the one here in the town that we live in.
God.
And they don't even like have an L&D unit there. It's just like a little emergency room and they do like outpatient procedures. But he was like, okay, we'll just go and see if we can have them check baby's position and get a cervical exam and see if we're close. And I was like, okay, fine, like we'll do that. So we went there and we had a terrible experience at
I'm
that
like, they probably
hospital.
thought you were crazy showing up. Like,
Yeah, I'm sure they did. Um, but we got there and there were only a few people waiting in the ER, but they were like, all right, it's first come, first serve, so you're gonna have to wait. And I'm like, I'm a laboring mom and I'm worried about my baby's position, and you're telling me I'm gonna have to wait like for somebody who has the flu, like they're gonna get seen first. So that was just really weird. And then when they finally got us all checked in, they gave me
Yeah,
paperwork for an older woman. So like they gave me somebody else's paperwork and somebody else's wristband. So it was very disorganized.
right.
And we ultimately decided that we weren't going to stay there. And so we went to a hospital up in Tucson. And the drive there was miserable. It was like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And that was terrible, just having contractions in the car. I was, again, not coping well. I was yelling through them. I was banging my fist on the window. I was just not, not coping at all. But we finally got to that hospital, and we were set on like just getting a cervical exam and seeing how close I was to giving birth. And if I was close, then we would go home and have the baby at home. But if not, then we would stay. So the nurse who was checking us in had called back to triage, and she was like, "Oh yeah, like we have a mom here who's in active labor. Like let's get her checked in." So they brought me back there, got me all checked in, put me on the monitors. It was a very, very small space, so not a lot of room to move around. After a while, somebody came around. They wanted to swab to see if my water had broken first before doing a cervical exam, which it had. And they didn't believe me when I told them about the pH test strip. They wanted to do their own test. So they did that and they came back positive that my water had broken. And I was not honest with them. I'm not proud of it, but I wasn't honest with them about the time that my water had broken because I knew if they had known how long it was, they'd be more likely to
right.
introduce interventions or
Mm-hmm.
recommend a C-section. So I did not share the actual time my water had broken with them. I think around this time, I forgot to add, was like 11 a.m. or something like that. So I'd been in labor for well over 24 hours at this point. But when they finally did give me a cervical exam, the poor triage nurse, she was so sweet. She was probably the sweetest one there throughout our whole stay. She looked at me and she said, "I'm so sorry, you're only 1 centimeter dilated." And
Oh,
I just broke down and sobbed. I was like absolutely heartbroken at that point because I had been laboring so long and had been in so much pain and thought that I had like been making progress, so much so he thought I was in transition
yeah.
and was reluctant to take me to the hospital because of that. And even the nurse who checked us in said that I was in active labor, but then the nurse was like, "Yeah, you're only 1 centimeter, you're only in early labor, it's gonna be a while." And so I sobbed. I was so disappointed. And I cried to him and told him that I couldn't do it and that I wanted to get an epidural. We told that nurse that we wanted to stay and get an epidural. And so they started to prep us a room. It did take a while to get the epidural, which I was not expecting. I was hoping for immediate relief, but I think between the time we got there and the time I got the epidural, like 3 hours had passed.
Yeah.
So it was still a while. Once we got to the room, they wanted to, draw labs and make sure that I had like high enough platelets to have an epidural, and I did. They also gave me some, I think, fentanyl through an IV, which was really strange. And I didn't expect to feel the way that I did on it. I felt very loopy and out of it. Like I couldn't keep my eyes
That's
open.
how I would expect you to feel on a fentanyl IV.
They didn't prepare me for that. And they also wanted me to like sign paperwork for the epidural and for the hospital stay and like to decline vaccines and stuff like that. While I was like on the fentanyl and I'm like, I can't even hold my eyes open. Like I can't hold my head up. Like I just need to lay down. I was so out of it. And they kept saying like, you need to sign this. You need to sign this. We need you to sign it right now. So after a while, I eventually signed it and the signature was probably terrible because I was so loopy.
Yeah, I thought that I failed you when we decided to go to the hospital because you told me so much like we're not going to the hospital and you're gonna have to fight back because of the transition, right? So yeah, I felt like I failed. I was getting really frustrated with the first hospital that we went to, which was here in our town. Just like they said they couldn't really work with her or do anything for her, and knowing that Miriam was only 1 centimeter dilated, I was just like, so all like for 24 hours for just all that, that's rough. To me, it was just like, all right, well, I guess it's a good thing that we're here in the hospital then. But yeah, it was just knowing, yeah, I kind of felt the same way. Not as bad as Miriam, but she was physically enduring all of it. But
Yeah.
just, yeah, just knowing that all of that work was just for 1 centimeter. I was like, man, there's still going to be a lot ahead of us right now.
Mm.
Yeah, I was exhausted. I mean, not as much as, again, I'm not trying to take away from what
Her
my wife
exhaustion.
endured. Yeah. But yeah, just being awake and not having the sleep, I was just that was my main challenge was just trying to be present.
Um,
So, did you guys get some sleep then once you got the epidural?
no, I did not.
Yeah.
I think you wound up
I
getting a few hours.
Yeah, I did. I slept in their hospital couch, whatever they had. So yeah, I don't know for how long I slept or how long the nap was. But yeah, I got some sleep because yeah, there was nothing at the time to
To
do. Like
do.
there was nothing really much to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, after they gave me the fentanyl, um, this doctor, actually, no, I think this was before they gave me the fentanyl. This doctor, the OB who was on call, came in the room and was wanting to like have a conversation with me. Um, but I was having a contraction at that point, and I wasn't responding to her. And so she was like, "Hey, you need to respond. You need to respond. Like I'm trying, like you need to answer my question." And I couldn't respond to her because I was focusing on having my contraction and laboring. And so eventually she turned to him and I don't even know what she told you, but she told you whatever she was going to tell me and asked you whatever question she was going to ask me, and then walked out of the room before my contraction was even over, which I felt was very disrespectful. And looking back, I realized it was the same doctor who I had seen before I found out I was pregnant with my son, the one who told me that, like, it doesn't matter if a woman misses her period, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, well, that tracks.
Yeah, I'm glad she was not the one who was on call when Shalom was actually born. But that was like just the beginning of like the disrespectful treatment that we had received at that hospital. There were many other things that had happened, such as like when they were trying to get me to sign the paperwork to decline like vitamin K and the erythromycin and oh gosh, what is the other one? Is it the Hep B shot? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I can't remember. I'm
Yeah.
totally blanking. But they were telling me that like my baby was gonna die and I need to recognize that I'm putting my baby at risk and risking their life just because I don't want to get the vaccines. And it wasn't in an informative way. It came across very judgmental and like the nurse who was trying to get me to sign the forms like wouldn't make eye contact with me and she had just a look on her face that was not nice at all. There was another nurse who was like shaming me for not getting tested for
Yeah.
GBS and telling me again that I was like risking my baby's life for not getting tested for GBS. And they did wound up putting me on antibiotics because I didn't get tested. And at that point, I kind of was just like, whatever. Like, I was so exhausted and so discouraged that I did not care at that point.
So, they didn't test you for GBS because that test takes a day or two to come back. They just, because you weren't tested, they assumed then that you have it. So then they put you on antibiotics.
Yeah, no, I think they did test me for GBS, but they did mention it wouldn't come back in time. So they were going to give me antibiotics preventatively.
Anyways, mm,
Yes. So after I got the fentanyl, I think you left and went and got some lunch because they told me once I got the epidural,
you can't eat.
I couldn't eat. So he got some poke, which was really yummy actually, and I did eat some, not a whole lot, but I did eat some, and I really enjoyed it. I ate that, and then a little while later, they placed the epidural. I don't even remember like getting the epidural placed. I hear women say like, "Oh, it's like so painful to feel the needle go in," but like to me, it felt like nothing compared to the intensity and pain that I was experiencing with the contractions. The needle was absolutely nothing. So I don't even remember getting that placed. But I was really looking forward to like feeling relief and hopefully being able to sleep because that's what they were telling me, like, oh, you'll be able to take a nap once you have the epidural. And so I was really hoping that I would since neither one of us had slept the night before.
Yeah.
But they placed the epidural around like 3 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock. And it brought some relief at first, but after a while, it started to only work on one side. And they had said, like, oh, it's just because you're laying on that side. Like, we'll flip you to the other side, and then it'll be like, it'll start to distribute more evenly throughout your body. And so they did that, but it didn't work. And I can't remember which side that it wasn't working on. I think maybe my left side. But for the duration of like the rest of my labor, I only felt the epidural
On
work
one
on one
side.
side of my body.
That's not rare. I hear that story so often, unfortunately. And the same thing, it's like usually they're like, yeah, if we just turn you, that side should numb out. But if it's not placed correctly, no matter how much you turn, it's not gonna do it.
Yes.
Did they try to replace it?
Eventually, they did, and it still did not help.
Mm.
And the anesthesiologist was so rude about that too. It really unusual.
Well, they don't like to be told that they didn't do a good job.
Do a good job.
Yeah.
And I won't even say it's probably not even her fault. Because I have like slight scoliosis, so there's some misalignment there. So it's probably not even her fault. It's not that she did a bad job. It's just that my body is not perfectly aligned. But she came back to replace it later that evening and like had ripped the tape off of my back. Like someone would
like
rip
in a
off
huff,
Band-Aid.
like, ugh, like.
Yeah, well, and just as quickly as someone would rip off a Band-Aid, and I never rip off Band-Aids. I will say I'm a wuss when it comes to Band-Aids and sticky stuff like that. I take them off very slowly. But she ripped it off my back, and I said like, "Ow, like that hurt." And she goes, "Oh, you can't even feel that." And I was like, "Lady, you're
Yes, I
literally
can.
in here.
That's why you're
literally in
replacing
here
my
because
epidural.
I can feel when I shouldn't be able
Yeah,
to."
it's just like, oh yeah, that owl was for nothing.
So that was not very nice. She was like telling me that I couldn't feel anything, that I was numb, and I was very much not numb at that point. Anyways, after I got on the epidural placed, he had gone home to gather our things because, of course, we had not intended to stay at the hospital, and so we had
Right.
nothing with us. We didn't even have the car seat. So he went home to grab some things. He was gone for probably a little more than 2 hours, which felt like an eternity at that point to me. And during that time, when he was gone, they had started me on Pitocin, which I didn't understand because I was having regular contractions. And I think from their perspective, they didn't think my contractions were strong enough because I wasn't dilating.
Mm.
But I think in reality, with my son being OP, which they did later confirm that he was, I think with him being OP, he just wasn't in a good enough position to like put enough pressure on my cervix and cause it to dilate. So essentially, they were like trying to force him out by starting Pitocin. And while he was gone, my son started having decels because of the Pitocin. His heart rate was dropping down to 70. And I remember at one point, like all of the nurses running into the room. There were like 4 or 5 of them, and they just like started adjusting me and doing things like without telling me what they were doing. And it was a very frightening moment to me. Even though I was aware that like his heart rate was dropping because of the Pitocin, I still felt very afraid in that moment. And during that time, they had placed like the fetal electrode, like the scalp monitor on him, and they didn't tell me that they did it until afterwards. And I was like, "Hey, like, what did you just do? Like, you just did something inside my body without
They
telling me.
didn't
What did you
ask.
do?" No, they didn't ask. And they're like, "Oh, we just placed one of these in his head. It just like pops right on." And I'm like, that doesn't look like it just pops right on. It looks like a
It
screw."
screws in.
Yes. And he did have a scab on his head for like a month
Yeah.
afterwards from
Yeah.
where they had placed it. So they did that, and that was very frightening to me.
So did they stop the Pitocin?
They did. They did stop the Pitocin. They resumed it at some point later that evening, but I can't remember when. I don't even know how many units of Pitocin they had me on at the end of it. I was very out of it. Like, I was very tired. I felt distressed and disappointed that we had transferred. I felt almost like embarrassed that I didn't like have him at home, that I wasn't able to stay home. I felt like I had failed in a sense too, and that I wasn't strong enough to have him at home. So I was feeling a lot of emotions,
Yeah.
and was also very tired. So I was out of it, and I don't remember the timeline as well as I remember like her birth.
Yeah. Hers was a little more recent too,
Yes, it was. That's very true.
and probably shorter.
Much. Thank God. So anyways, the electrode like wasn't working fully well. And so they eventually replaced it, and that still didn't help. He had a lot of hair, so I think that was
Oh,
messing with
trying to
its
get through
ability to
there.
function well. Yes. So they eventually took that out and just used the monitors on my belly for the rest of the labor.
Well, that's good.
Yes. The rest of the evening wasn't very eventful. They did like have a shift change around like 7 or 8 that night, and so we got new nurses and a new doctor. And I remember that when the new OB walked in the room and introduced herself, she was a lot nicer, which I was thankful for. And she asked if I had any questions, and for some reason I was like really concerned about getting an episiotomy, and so I was like, "Well, what's your episiotomy rate?" And she's like, "Oh, we almost never do them unless it's an emergency." And I was like, "Great," and that was all I asked her. Um, so I think that's interesting. I find it funny that that's what I remember. But
So,
anyways,
had they checked your dilation at any point the rest of the day or night, or were they just not doing it since your water was broken?
they were doing it. Not very often, probably like once every 4 hours, which I think is like standard if water is already broken. And I was progressing, but it was a relatively slow progression. It's not like I got the epidural and progressed very quickly.
Yeah,
Things still went slowly. I wasn't fully dilated until I think closer to like 2 in the morning, 2 or 3 in the morning on Monday, June 5th. And around this time, he was sleeping. He was taking a nap as he should have been, and I was not able to sleep. And I was still not coping well with the contractions because the epidural was not
not
working.
working. Right.
Our night nurse was like in and out of the room, checking on me, adjusting things, probably upping the Pitocin and whatnot. And I find this really odd. She was the one giving me cervical checks, not an OB.
That happens sometimes because the OBs are usually sleeping or with
Mm,
another patient, but usually sleeping. And so they don't like to be bothered unless it's a task that only they're allowed to perform.
that would make
So, like
sense.
a delivery or breaking of the water or episiotomy or vacuum or, things like that. Whereas the nurses are allowed to do cervical exams.
That makes sense. So, anyways, the nurse was checking me, and at one point she said to me, this was around like 2 in the morning. She's like, "Oh, you're fully dilated. Like, let's do some practice pushes." And so we do that. She was like, "Yep, okay, well, you need to hold your breath and push for 10 seconds, and we're going to do that 3 times in one contraction." And so we did that, and that was really exhausting. And I like asked her, I'm like, can I like breathe through my contractions instead of pushing? Because I knew that like purple pushing essentially, where you just hold your breath and bear down, is more likely going to result in a more severe tear.
Tear.
And so I was trying to avoid that. And she's like, "No, you need to like listen to me and hold your breath and push down." So I was too tired to fight back. So that's what I did. And we did that for about 45 minutes, and it was really exhausting. And I felt like I wasn't making any progress. And so she like checked me again, and she's like, "Oh, you have a cervical lip. You're only like 9.5 centimeters dilated." And I'm like, "Why were we pushing? Why did we start pushing 45 minutes ago? Why am I exerting this energy when I'm not even fully dilated?" So she agreed to like let me have a rest or whatever, and she left the room. I continued having contractions with still like fully feeling them on one side of my body. And I believe at that point I was still crying through them and yelling through them because it was so painful, and I had basically zero coping skills at that point. She came back in a while later, and we started, like, my cervical lip was finally gone, and we started pushing again. He was still napping at that point, and I pushed for a while, probably another 45 minutes to an hour. In total, I think I pushed for almost 3 hours, so it was quite a long time. But eventually we got to the point where the baby, like you could see his head, and with each push, he was getting closer and closer to coming out. And I wanted him to be there to help me, especially because my back was hurting so much at that point and I needed counter pressure on it.
Well, and he could see the birth of his son.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I had asked the nurse if she would go wake him up. And she said no. She said that he needed to sleep. And
What?
I know it was appalling. I couldn't like fathom that she had said no, that she wouldn't wake him up. So I started like
Screaming his name.
screaming his name, and he was just sleeping through it. And I don't blame him one bit. He was
I would have
so
like gotten
tired.
pillows and just like chucked him over there.
I would have done that if he wasn't so
I
far across the
cannot
room.
believe your nurse would not wake him up when your baby was crowning.
Yeah, that was messed up.
My goodness.
I think they had a lot of prejudice towards me because we were a home birth transfer.
Right. And you declined all their vaccines and blah, blah, blah. So they
Yes,
were.
there were a lot of remarks that they made that were very disrespectful that like had to do with us jeopardizing his health for even attempting a home birth. Even like after the birth, nurses were making comments like, "Oh, now you'll know better for next time, like not to do something
Yeah.
so stupid." And I'm not even exaggerating. Like that is how they were talking to us. It was insane.
Yeah, that hospital experience was not the
Probably
best.
made you never want to go back
It's
to a
very-
hospital.
No,
That's exactly
no.
what I'm thinking. Like, if I were an LND nurse and I had a mom transferring for a home birth, and if I hypothetically thought home births were wrong, I certainly wouldn't be shaming them for it. Especially because a lot of moms, I feel, want to have a home birth because they want to avoid
All of that.
the interventions and the judgment in the hospital and being mistreated. So it wouldn't make sense for nurses and doctors to mistreat home birth transfers in hopes to what, scare them into wanting to come back? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Oh, the fear mongering. Ah.
So thankfully, it was 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing with pushing him out. So he would like come out a little bit and then retreat. So it was still taking a while. And I think Balt finally woke up like 15 to 20 minutes after I first started yelling for him.
Oh my gosh, that long?
Yes, it was that long, honey.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
um, and after that, like he started to like really crown, like his actual head was like halfway out after
Well, there's
that.
probably part of you that's trying probably not to push as hard until your husband
Yes.
is with you.
Yeah, I'm sure that was the case. So whenever that happened, the nurse was like, "Okay, don't push. We're gonna bring in the doctor." And they brought in the doctor, and they like got out their birth card, and all the nurses started coming in. Oh, I forgot to mention earlier when they put the fetal electrode scalp monitor in his head. They of course like had to like fully break my bag of waters. I think what had happened is I probably had like a leak or a tear higher up from the day before, and then when they put the electrode in it, it broke it. And when that happened, there was a lot of meconium in the water.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a NICU team at the birth just in case, my son would have like aspirated on the meconium.
Right.
There were quite a few people in the room. But the doctor came in and they, had me, with my legs up as close to my face as they could, feet in the stirrups. I was like pulling on my legs. They told me to like put my chin down to my chest and try to like curve my back forward and still going on with the purple pushing. The OB was telling me to push, and she had, like, as his head was coming out, put her hands on my perineum and, like, pushed on it inwards and, like, basically, like, popped his head out and then grabbed up underneath his chin and pulled him up by his jaw and, like, pulled him out and then handed him to me. And he was born, and, like, in that moment, I was so, so relieved. I was not a fan of, like, how he was born. I didn't appreciate how the OB was handling him, but I felt so relieved. And for me, it was still a very, like, a euphoric, emotional moment. And that was something that I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to experience, like, experience the joy of my child being born, being in the hospital setting. Because I had heard so many stories on, like, the free birth podcast, like, when you get an epidural or in a hospital, it's like, you basically numbs your feelings too, along with like feeling numb physically. But I still felt just like immediate love. And I don't even know how to describe it, the feeling that I felt in that moment. Just relief and love and joy and immense happiness that my son had been born.
After how many hours labor? What time was he born?
He was born at 5 a.m. and after 49 hours of labor.
Yeah, you're relieved. I'm sure you're relieved.
Yes. And I think another part of me was relieved that like I didn't have to at that point like continue enduring like how the nurses and the doctors had been treating us
you.
during that stay as well.
Yeah.
Anyways, they put him straight on my chest, which I was very grateful for, and I held him and I cried for a couple of minutes, and then shortly after our beautiful moment, they brought it to an end. They're like, all right, we need to,
Let's cut the
do a
cord.
repair and cut the cord and get him over to the table to be assessed and whatnot. I think that the cord was intact for maybe 5 minutes, which is not a long time, but I was still glad that it was more than like 30
30
seconds.
seconds. Yeah.
Yeah. So they cut the cord. I think you got to cut the cord, right?
Yeah, I cut the cord. Yeah, I was able to cut the cord, and then like the events leading to that. I mean, yeah, I woke up and there was just a lot of doctors and nurses circling around. Like I was still like in sleep mode. Like I was groggy. And then I got up and saw like Miriam in like in the birth position and just pushing, and I was like, "Oh, it's happening right now." And I get there and Miriam was just like, "Record, record." Yeah, so she gave me her phone, and I'm just like, "Okay, now this is something I need to like focus on and get the shot." And then just like what I'm looking at, like again, this is my first time seeing a birth. And I'm just like, oh, this is intense. Whoa.
And I later learned
And
after he was born that you had expected them to like put a sheet over my legs like they do in the movie.
yeah.
Even if
Oh.
like, watching Shalom come out of me, which I thought was so funny that you had expected that. I
Yeah.
mean, how is he supposed to know any differently, I guess?
Yeah, I mean that's what I grew up watching, like in the shows, and that's how they presented it. Uh, and that's what I expected. But yeah, just like waking up, recording, and then just seeing this intense
Seeing this
moment.
conehead baby come
I
out.
was yeah, like yeah, he was so coned head. I was like, whoa.
I think you were worried about his head and if like something
Yeah.
was wrong with him.
Uh-huh. And then what else happened during that time? Yeah, and then it was rough because like and I think Miriam saw it, like I was just emotionless because I was still trying to wake up and I
And
didn't
it's been
seem
such a long labor too. I
yeah.
think we're both emotionally depleted by the end of it.
Mm. And so like I felt bad that I didn't like show that. So yeah, the nurse tells me like, "All right, Dad, cut the cord." I was like, "Oh, oh." Like again, like just
You're just going with
emotionless.
emotions.
Yeah, I was just going with emotions, cut the cord, and then finally, like, yeah, we got fixed up, and then
Fixed
the
up. I had a third degree tear.
Mm.
And I fully believe that's, well, for multiple reasons. You know, having an epidural, pushing on my back, pushing for 3 hours. I definitely started pushing before he was ready, considering I had a
Right.
cervical lip. And then I think the way that the OB delivered him, you know, and like pushing on my perineum and pulling him out, my perineum had no chance to stretch at all. So it just ripped. So I had a third degree tear, and that caused for like a really rough recovery
Yeah, I bet.
afterwards. But yeah, anyways, we held him for a few minutes. They took him to the table and checked him out, and he was totally fine. No meconium aspiration. Um, they gave him back to us. And I think within like 20 minutes of him being born, I latched him on for the first time. And I knew nothing about breastfeeding. I just knew that I was going to do it. That was it. I'm actually really surprised now, like how uneducated I was in the moment. So after like nursing him for like 20 or 30 minutes on one side, I had him go ask a nurse. I'm like, how long am I supposed to nurse him on one side before switching to the other? And they just recommended switching after 20 minutes. So that's what I did there in the hospital. Eventually, we got moved to our postpartum room within a few hours of him being born. I still hadn't eaten by that point. I did ask for something after he was born, and they gave me like a little pack of like the honey graham crackers
I
that
was
had
like,
two.
crackers, that's all they have on the
Yes.
floor.
Yes, which I was like, "Are you serious? Like it's been, you know, at
It's
least
because they
36
don't let
hours."
laboring women eat. And so all they can give you is that quote unquote clear liquids stuff. That's all they have stocked.
Insane.
yeah.
So I said, "Forget that," and I let him eat the graham crackers. Um, and what, they didn't start serving breakfast till like 9 in the morning or something like that. So I didn't eat until probably 9:30, and he was born at 5 in the morning.
Oof.
By that
You
time
need
we were,
food like right after you have a baby.
I know, yes. Um, by that time, we had been in our, like been moved to our postpartum room. I was still very, very numb. Like my legs were numb. By
Yeah.
the end of the labor, like I had no numbness in my abdomen, so I felt all the contractions, but from the waist to down, I was numb, thankfully. So I didn't feel the third degree tear happen, which I'm very thankful for.
Oh, that's
But
positive.
my legs were like lead. Like I could not move them to save my life. And so probably like 5 hours after his birth when I like got up and walked for the first time, and they took me to the bathroom, and the nurse helped me put on my little like postpartum pad or whatever with the pad like the ice pack and whatnot. And yeah, like we just stayed in the hospital for like 36 hours after he was born. We were there for a day and a half. Originally, they said we had to be there for 48 hours to make sure that he didn't show symptoms of like having contracted GBS. But they let us go early because he was acting fine.
Fine. Yeah.
He was fine and I was fine. So yeah, we went home and
Yeah, that was a happy moment when we got
I finally got to
discharged.
go home. It was, they made me walk out of the hospital, which was really hard. I was asking for a wheelchair, because
Ouch.
my tear hurt so much.
Yeah.
But they were like, no, you need to walk. It's good for you to get up and walk. So they made me walk out of the hospital and into the car. The car ride home was very uncomfortable with the tear. Yeah,
Yeah, I was just happy to go home with our whole family. That was a happy moment, just putting Shalom in a
car seat.
car seat, and just taking off. That was awesome.
I was happy to get out of there for sure.
I bet after the treatment, I mean, it's like you could have a woman who has the same exact series of events that you had in terms of like, my water broke, I labored at home for a long time, planning a home birth, but we had a transfer, got an epidural, all the things. But the way that you're treated and the way that you're supported or not supported, it's like that's what's going to make or break your experience and like how you feel it and how you experience it. I actually had a mom on the podcast earlier this year with a similar story for her first, which she's only had one baby, so she's only had this first experience, but she was a water broke, home birth transfer, all the things, ended up with an epidural. But she had such a wonderful hospital experience and had such like good nurses and good providers and good pediatricians and everything that like the way she told her story, it's like you could just tell that's what made the difference in her transfer. And now she still said she would have a home birth like next time and everything. Because now I'm about to ask you, how did all of that affect your postpartum with Shalom?
It was a really rough postpartum. I was very, very, very weepy in the beginning, the first couple of months, just crying randomly all the time. In the beginning, I was mainly just crying because I was so disappointed by the birth experience, and also felt like traumatized by it as well because of how I had been treated and like the things that were said to me and done without my consent. But overall, it was a very rough postpartum. I had developed like postpartum anxiety and depression. I was having intrusive thoughts. I also struggled with postpartum rage, which I had no idea
Was a
was
thing.
even a thing
Mm-hmm.
before it actually happened. I think I was like 3 days postpartum, and I had like my haka, and I'd collected my milk had finally come in, and I had collected milk on one side while I was nursing my son on the other. And I had asked him to like put it in the fridge or whatever, and he just left it out on like the side of the couch, and our cat knocked it over onto the floor, and I got upset with him about it. And I asked him to put it in the fridge again, and I think he put it on the coffee table, and our cat's tail knocked it over again, and I just like lost it. And I was totally not expecting to have a reaction like that, and it really freaked me out, and it really freaked him out. It was so sudden, and it felt like I just didn't have control of myself. And that continued to be like a recurring issue throughout, I'd say like the first 8 to 9 months of his life. And the depression and anxiety lasted about that long too.
Did you recognize what was going on? Did you try to get any type of help? Did you seek out like counseling or like ask a provider or anything like that? Or how did you, how did you go about that?
Um, when I went to my follow-up appointment with the OB, I had mentioned something about it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, like that's normal to experience. Just keep an eye on it," kind of thing. I was seeing a counselor at the time, and we were talking about it and working through it. There was a lot going on. Like him and I, like we were still basically newlyweds at the time. We'd only been married a little more than a year, so we were still trying to figure out how to, live life together and then bring that in with the new baby, who, by the way, was like colicky and would just like cry and scream, and he barely slept. So it was very, very hard on both of us to just care for him. And I think, like, in looking back, he probably had some acid reflux that I didn't realize that he had, and I didn't think to address with the pediatrician. So maybe some medicine could have helped, maybe not. But it was very hard, and we were like struggling with communication. There was a lot going on. We did meet with a counselor several times, and I think it helped a little bit, but I don't know.
Another thing that affected the postpartum was the bathroom renovation. I had 4 weeks of parental leave from work, which was nice, but instead of using that time to be with Miriam and with Shalom, our son at the time, well, currently still is, but yeah, instead of spending time with them and supporting them, I was mainly just focused on getting the bathroom renovations done. And so I basically left Miriam alone with Shalom a big majority of the first couple of weeks or several weeks. And so that affected her because she felt alone and frustrated and abandoned. And so, yeah, I wish I wouldn't have done that and put that as a priority. Because yeah, we really wanted a bathroom to shower in, basically. And so yeah, as much as that's nice to have and it's important, I was still putting something above what she actually needed, and that was just support.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that affected postpartum.
I think I was having a hard time adjusting to being a mom and like letting go of my own, desires and wants and my idea of how I thought things should go. I never heard of a baby who didn't sleep before, I was expecting to have a sleepy newborn. That's what people said, like, oh, newborns just sleep all the time. They're so easy. And I was having a really hard time with him.
Changing expectations.
Yeah. So with that, plus the birth experience and feeling like I couldn't like talk to anybody about the birth experience because we hadn't really shared our plans with anyone to free birth. Um, Briefly, when I had like mentioned the idea of home birth to some people, we had like received some lashback and like saying like, oh, you shouldn't do that. That's a bad idea. And so we didn't want to share with anyone our intentions to free birth. And that made me feel like I couldn't share the story with anyone because they would have just said like, oh, well, good thing you went to the hospital, something
Right.
of that sort.
It wouldn't have made you feel any better about it.
So it was very isolating. It was a very isolating time. But I will admit, I also had a really hard time voicing my needs and my opinions and my desires to other people. So I was like, in a sense, also contributing to my own isolation because I wasn't willing to communicate. I had this idea that like people should come to me and they should know what I need. Like I shouldn't have to tell them what I need. So that was a learning point for me over the course of the last couple of years as well.
So how did you guys come out of that? Like what made you want to have another baby after all of that and like go through that again? Because I can imagine between the birth itself and then between him not sleeping well and being colicky and you having all the postpartum stuff and it lasting for months and months and months, what made you want to do it again? Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. You can reach me at Surrendered Birth Services on Instagram or email me at contact@surrenderedbirthservices.com. Be sure not to miss an episode by hitting the follow button. Also, we'd love for you to leave a written review of the show so that more people's births and lives can be changed by the love of Jesus and the empowerment of accurate birth education. If you really enjoyed this episode in particular, please take a screenshot of it and post it to your Instagram story, tagging Surrendered Birth Services. If you would like to be a guest on the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, please click the link in the episode show notes to fill out your interest form. Also, if you're interested in taking my childbirth classes, birth consultations, or having me as your birth doula, please click on the link in the show notes to take you to my website for online and in-person options. Just as a reminder, This show is not giving medical advice, so please continue to see your personal care provider as needs arise. We hope you have a great week, and remember, learn all that you can, make the best plans, and then leave it in God's hands. Sorry, I have to pee so badly. I'm like holding it together.
It's okay.
And we only have a couple minutes left on the call. So I'm going to run to the bathroom really quick and we can start a new call. I'm so interested in what you're saying. I'm so distracted by my full bladder. So
It's okay. Take your time.
I will see you in 2 minutes. I'm so
Okay.
sorry. Okay.